If you look at the voting results all around the country, if it's the army base, we won. So I think it's not just about keeping the army or army management in the dark of how it's done inside the barrack, inside their own army camp, but also just to make sure that the rest of the country understand what's going on inside. And I think it's about 1% versus 99% all around the country, including the army as well. So I think the people that it's part of the unfair, dark moments inside the army would understand what we're trying to do. And I think a lot of it needs to be a dialogue between what we're trying to do in the army as well.
And the monarchy, you've called for a conversation about the relationship between the monarchy and the people. Mm-hmm. But this is such a sensitive subject. Many people would say Thailand just isn't ready for that.
Mm-hmm. I would argue again that if we were to have an interview together with BBC 4 years ago, this question wouldn't be on the topic. But I think we have some maturity and we have some tolerance to really speak out about the monarchy in the more matured way. So
I think a lot of Thais don't have that. They're not that ready. Mm-hmm. You're going to face some very difficult opposition.
Yeah, but that's a flow and not a snapshot. Like I explained to you. I mean, in the beginning, it was a taboo that even a mild criticism or even a mild question is unacceptable. But nowadays, talking in the parliament is starting to become possible. Talking with the media is now possible. So now that it's more neutralized, and if we speak about this in the most matured and careful way, I think people will start to understand. Even the conservatives that understand what the role of the monarchy in the modern century would be, in the 21st century, in modern Thailand should be, and how constitutional monarchy should be governed. I think that's when we're starting to have a good conversation and dialogue, and that takes time, that I understand.
The one specific measure that your party zeroed in on is amending the controversial lèse-majesty law, mm-hmm. 112 as it's called, mm-hmm. in Thailand. Yet mm-hmm. that is the issue on which many senators say mm-hmm. they cannot support you. It could block you forming a government. Mm-hmm. Why not just drop it for now? Why not say, okay, let's push this aside for this term of government in order to overcome the opposition of the senators and focus on other issues?
Because it's what we had promised the people. And we've been clear before the campaign. So we have submitted the law 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, way before the election. And also it was part of the campaign, even though it's one of the 300 policies that we have submitted. There's a lot of challenges, not just Article 112, but it's part of a political situation nowadays as well. So it was one out of the 300 policies.
But it's the most controversial, it's the most difficult mm-hmm. for so many Thais to swallow.
We have to separate out, if we have enough mandate, we have the votes of 14 million people, and they understood. It was clear, it was transparent that it's one of the agendas that we wanted to push. And then, of course, there's some senators, appointed senators, that didn't agree that, the sentiment of the era has changed. There's inconvenient truth is
but
going
they have
out
the
there.
Power to block you.
Yes, for one last year. And I would disagree with the question whether all the senators would think the same. I think that would be a quick brush of the picture as well. There's a lot of senators that I have spent some time with during the past 4 years that understand. They might not understand in the beginning, but once they understand the desire to do and the details, and then they say, okay, actually I agree with this. I don't want monarchy to be used as a political weapon to destroy people or to jail a juvenile at the age of 15 years old anymore. So, it's about dialogue again. It's about conversations. But I think to assume that all Thais agree or disagree, or to assume that all senators agree or disagree, that's a bit of a quick brush all over. But I think if I get a chance to sit down and talk to the people who are opposing it, or people who actually wanted to increase the penalty of royal defamation, I think we'll be able to find a common ground or consensus going forward. And the best place to have a dialogue about this with some maturity, with transparency, is the parliament. And that's the role of the parliament in the first place.
Now, you've got a very broad and ambitious agenda, some of the sort of changes that you're talking about could take a very long time. Are there quick win policies that you have that you can pass fairly quickly to show people that you can get things done?
Yes. So how we campaign is I had my 100-day agenda, I had my first year agenda, I had my first term agenda, I had my 2-term agendas. So we have a timeline and a roadmap for each. If you're asking me about the quick win, it would be my 100-day agenda. I think what we are aligned in our 8-party forming coalition government at the moment is to amend the constitution, for the people, by the people. So that's something that we have to do through a referendum, and it's executive power. So that could be done right away to remedy the situation when it comes to political turmoil, to find a new consensus as well. In terms of,
you think you could actually get a new constitution within your first term?
I think so. Yes. It has to be through 4 or 5 referendums, but I could start off with the first referendum asking the people whether they want a new constitution by the people or not. If that's the question that is passed, then we can start the process within the first 100 days, to be clear. Yeah. In terms of economics, liquor liberalization, we have the same market size as Japan. We have 2 producers. Japan has 40,000 producers. So just by having a Minister of Finance, we could just amend one of the ministerial order to say that you can't have a barrier to entry just because of registered capital or the size anymore. So that way we could decommoditize all the agricultural products here in Thailand, from rice to tapioca to sugarcane to all the fruits here in Thailand. So that could be a way to jumpstart the economy. Electricity prices has to go down by about 20-25%, negotiating. Ministry of Energy as well as the energy moguls.
Do you think they're making too much money?
They are having too much benefit from the previous government through contracts that is unfair to the people. So that's something that has to be mended. The last thing is to help the SMEs within the first 100 days is called SME lottery. It's something that we learn from Taiwan, just to have an incentives for people to go to do their shopping at the SME outlets rather than large enterprises all the time. In terms of our future education, I think we can start off by making sure that the teachers are back in the classroom and without any bureaucracy anymore. So these are something that during the past 4 years as an MP we saw that there are things that just with the executive power, without additional budgets from the parliament, could actually push for change. A lot of things has to be done through the legal amendment, military conscription. That's give it first 1 year in order to push it through the agenda in the parliament. So we were pretty realistic when it comes to these things. If we have to do something that demanded more budget, it's probably impossible within the first 100 days.
How would your government's foreign policy differ from its predecessors?
Well, not a quiet diplomacy, not a bamboo diplomacy, but a rule-based one. Would be an a la carte and not a buffet. Would be more like a poker and not a chess game. A la carte, not a buffet in the sense that for the past decade in Thailand, it was pretty clear because of the military junta relationship with a certain country.
You mean Myanmar, of course.
And also the Chinese. So definitely we need to engage the international community more. We have to rebalance in the sense that it's a rule-based diplomacy world. When we rebalance to be a strategic competition between the two, the right thing to do for the new world order, we need to speak up. With what happened in Russia or Ukraine, we abstain. But if we stick to the rules that a bigger country cannot aggress a smaller country, it's against UN convention. It's against the rule-based world order. We have to speak out, and it doesn't mean that we are siding with the Russians. It does not mean that we are siding with the Ukrainians, but we're siding with the rule-based world order. And if that's the case, I think it's time for middle power like us to stick together, and it's time for us to lead.
So a Peter Lim Charoenrat government would be a lot more vocal internationally.
No words, no weight. in foreign policy. I mean, if you don't speak out, you don't exist, and you don't have a spine to contribute.
And you want Thailand to carry more weight.
Of course. Otherwise, the weight will be on Thailand with what's going on in globalization. Whether it's a pollution problem, whether it's economic problem, whether it's the price of fertilizer prices, all those are coming out from foreign policy. All those are coming out from all over the world, and we don't have enough appetite or energy to fix all these problems at the very downstream. So we got to be very active in foreign policies, because all of our problems that are happening here domestically is coming 7,000 kilometers away from Thailand. So you have to be more active, you have to be more vocal, and you have to carry on the weight. Otherwise, the weight will just tumble down on your country.
One point about your party is, you're involved in very tough negotiations at the moment with your coalition partner, Pheu Thai. You have more seats than them, slightly more, 10 more seats. But they have the option of getting into bed with almost anybody else, and you don't because of your principles. Doesn't that, in the end, put you in a weaker position? Because Pheu Thai know that if the deal doesn't work out with you, they can go and get into bed with some of the other parties, and that's fine for them. And they know that you don't have another option for government apart from a partnership with them.
I'm not sure if I agree with the premise of the question. I think we both don't have the options. It depends on who you ask, probably. But I feel like from my interactions with Pheu Thai leadership before the election and after the election, I don't think any of our parties have the option of getting out of what the people have labeled it as coalition of dreams, of hope moving forward. So I think the expectations of people, of us forming the government, is a hefty price to pay. If we have to destroy their hope and dreams of moving Thailand forward. So I don't think we're in the position of weakness. And I feel like from the outside, like any other coalition forming all around the world, it seems like a chaotic situation. But inside the room, negotiating, working with Pheu Thai has been what I had done for the past 4 years, even in the opposition. But we also had to negotiate a lot. Negotiate for the votes, negotiate for the time allotment during the censorship debate and things like that. And we always didn't see eye to eye. But we always, had a way to compromise and come out of that negotiation pretty okay. And now, it's a bigger stake for sure, but it's still the same process of negotiation. And we understand, or I understand, that negotiation starts outside the room. It includes a lot of pre-wiring. It includes knowing what I want and what they want. It includes understanding boundaries. It includes contingency plan and scenario analysis of what can turn out. So if we understand what negotiation strategy is, it's not always going to be unexpected failure that would, put the burden on the majority of the people of Thailand. So I'm still pretty confident that the negotiation, despite some noises, it will keep continuing, and we'll be able to form the coalition very soon.
For as long as I've been living in Thailand, more than 20 years off and on, even before that, Thailand has been talked about as a country that is on the cusp of becoming an upper income country. It's always on the verge, but somehow doesn't get there. Governments in the past have failed. Why would you succeed?
Because I'm different, in the sense that it's not just getting in a coalition to pursue a quick fix, to pursue my own agenda, but I'm here in the government for the people, to make sure that it's not just a short-term wins of votes to get me into a prime ministership or to get me into minister of seats, but really to show that what's wrong with Thailand can be fixed with what is right with Thailand. And that's why we entered politics. And that remains to be seen, I understand. But I think we have proved in the past 4 years that if we try very hard, we could return some faith, and we could return some efficiency, and we could return some transparency to the parliament. I hope to do the same with the government.
I just have two final questions that actually my colleagues in BBC Thai asked me to ask you, and they're fairly simple ones. So,
Sure.
First one is, what kind of leadership style do you think you will have if you're Prime Minister? You're going to be authoritative, they've put down, I don't mean authoritarian, authoritative, decisive, or democratic in your style?
Servant leadership has always been my style. Servant leadership, it's a kind of leader that creates more leaders. It's the kind of leader that tells people that your problem is my problem. So it doesn't mean that I have to be in the limelight all the time. And I think the world has changed so much that you don't have to be a strong man with toxic masculinity to make sure people have to listen to me, and I have to be the one in the spotlight all the time. Jacinda Ardern, with my coming out from New Zealand, falling out with her with the same age, with the same style. I feel like those are kind of style that I like. Pepe of Uruguay, doesn't have to be in that I have to be perfect all the time, but I could, just be like a regular, humble human being here in Thailand, riding motorcycles and eat on the streets like any other people. So
no more puyai.
No more puyai. Those are the things that I wanted to be.
The other question they asked was whether, we all know your predecessor, Quintana Torn, had this tremendous sort of charisma and sort of was quite a outspoken kind of character. Mm-hmm. And they're asking, do you think your own sort of image as somebody who's, more moderate, very sort of clean cut, very well groomed, well educated, was that a factor in helping you win the election, that you were perhaps more broadly acceptable?
Well, Quintana Torn he's an ultra marathoner. He could run 100 kilometers. I'm a squash player. So if he were to compare to me on a squash court, I would use him to mop the floor. But if I were to go...
You told him that?
Yes. If I were to go run with him with 100 kilometers, I would probably die in the first 10 kilometers. So we're different. And I think it's an unhealthy comparison to compare me and him, because we're all different. I think what we need to focus on is to focus on our strengths, of how we could portray our strengths in order to push our agenda forward, because we have the same collective agenda for sure. Just the way we process it, just the way we portray it, just the way we manage it might be different because of our difference. We're different human beings, but I would focus on my game, on my style, on my cadence, and he would focus on his style and his cadence. But I think when we work together, it's a synergy. 1 + 1 = 3.
And if you get into government and you complete your 4-year term, what kind of country would you like Thailand to be at the end of it?
Would be decentralized and not centralized. Finally, Bangkok is not Thailand. Thailand is not Bangkok. There will be some equality in terms of public health service, in terms of education, in terms of budget, in terms of tax collection. That's what I wanted to see. Very much like any other countries that we like to visit, whether it's England or Japan or France. I want our economic structure from a very big head at the very top and very weak in the arms and legs and the core muscle to be more balanced. I want Thailand to be outside in and not just inside out. And what I mean by that is that I want Thailand to be thinking about our country from the outside in perspective, whether it's the level of human rights, whether it's the level of upholding the international standards, as part of a good member of the international community when it comes to trade, when it comes to investment, when it comes to tourism, when it comes to becoming part of international organizations, upgrading our environmental standards so that we could handle CBAM of Europe, for example. So instead of thinking about how to do business here in Thailand in the Thai standards, we have to be able to improve so that we could accommodate with international standards that are coming from Europe, so that the country is part of the international community. Domestically equal and also up to speed with the international standard. That would be my conclusion for what I wanted to see Thailand in the first term or the second term. During my prime minister, during my leadership.